What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler, the NBA's greatest analyst by day, but his true passion, a true crime detective by night. Legs, how you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm just glad you didn't put me out in that field of goats again. Okay, you're starting to get the gist of things. That's good. Good. We've only been together for 2 years now. You're finally catching on.
I'm trying to make up for it. But I am curious. So you had your big drive. You know, you've listened. You've gotten to the bottom of all these cases. Is there any update you can provide us on the latest case?
Well, yeah, without question, I'm obsessed with the Karen Reed trial right now. In the midst of this retrial, she was had a hung jury the first time around. She has the boyfriend that was a police officer that ended up dead in the snow after a night of drinking and partying, and she's being accused of running him over with her car after an argument. She's saying he went in the house. They beat him up inside, dropped him in the front lawn, and framed her. It's fascinating stuff, man. It's good stuff. So this guy was on this. And I'm a little behind. I downloaded these episodes because I'm about a week behind. They had a forensic guy on, man. That was the most fascinating 4 hours of video of stuff I've ever seen. The guy does a complete. This dude has, because of the data taken from the car, Adam, and it's actually kind of scary if you're thinking about committing a crime. Just give you a heads up what these vehicles are recording you do. Okay, it's got to come back to haunt you, man. The digital footprint from your accelerometer is a problem. That's all I'm going to tell you right now.
That's pretty hilarious, man. I love how much you get into the details of your hobbies because it shows with the level of detail you get into in your actual
passion,
profession.
Man. I got passion for this stuff. Yeah, come on.
Do not cross Tim Legler, man. He will hunt you down. He will find you. He's been listening to these things for years. On today's show, obviously the NBA Finals start tonight, the Pacers and the Thunder. So on today's show, we're going to attack this from all angles, talk about non-negotiables for both teams, look at some of the key battlegrounds, make some predictions about how we think it's going to go. Pacers at Thunder. But Legs, I want to start by just setting the stage because, look, let's be honest. These big markets sell, big names sell in the NBA. This is not that. But in my opinion, it's really good basketball. And I'm going to start you with what I think is line item number one of why this series is exciting to me. I think it is a matchup of the team that creates the most problems for their opponent in the NBA. That's the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the team that is probably most equipped and has proven to be the best at solving problems, that is the Indiana Pacers. So problem creation versus problem solving, that to me is like how I would describe this series.
I think that's a great way to put it. I mean, this to me has the obvious analogy also of a boxing match or a like I compared it one time to a Super Bowl matchup where there's this great defense against this great offense. So what's going to win out? It's kind of like that. But at the same time, I don't want to sell either of these teams short. Oklahoma City is an excellent offensive team. Clearly, they've got the league's leading scorer, and they can hit you with a barrage of scoring. But a lot of it is triggered off their defense. And Indiana, by the way, their defensive metrics over the last few months have been fantastic, and they're 12-4 in the postseason, man. And they don't lose back-to-back games. And so I don't want to sell either short by making it seem like it's just OKC's defense versus Indy's offense. These are complete teams. You don't get to the finals without it. They both got great depth. But I think your analogy is as good as any. I think that's a good way to look at it.
The Thunder just wreak havoc on you, and that's one of the top line items is are the Pacers going to be able to handle that? They have a lot of ball handling. So they are equipped, it would seem, but they have not faced a team like OKC because there is no team like OKC. They're the only ones that can do that, but on the defensive end. But what I will say is I have this belief, tell me if you agree with this, that The playoffs sharpen teams because you can't simulate playoff basketball. You can get it in pockets, maybe a quarter, but you have to be so locked in, and the adjustments in the game planning, the level of detail goes up so that when teams, by the time you make it to the finals, it's like iron sharpens iron. I think these two teams execute better than anyone else in the NBA, in part because they went through 3 rounds of the playoffs that forced them to get to this level of execution.
I totally agree with that. It's funny as you go, not so much for Oklahoma City because they were great out of the gate. They were great all year. Again, that's another team lost 2 games in a row, twice all year. Once was in the very beginning of the season, and the other was late when they weren't playing anybody. So again, they've kind of known who they are all year. They have certain level of expectation every night, but you prove things to yourself internally each round, depending on your opponent and what you have to overcome and figure out of what they bring to the table and taking that away. And you actually build confidence and you become even more certain of the outcome by doing that against certain teams and certain players and certain styles of play. And you just bring them to their knees the way that they have done in the moments they need to. It gives you a lot more confidence even than you had going into the postseason. I think for Indiana, clearly that's going to be the case with your 12-4 in the postseason and this run. And I think the only ones maybe that aren't surprised by it all are themselves. I think they believe this could happen the entire time. Other people are starting to now join in a little bit and admire this team for how good they've been. And now you get this situation. It's very unusual. You see the betting lines. I mean, I don't know. Is there a single person out there that is actually in our industry that's actually picking Indiana to win this series? You never see that. Never.
Yeah.
I don't care who's matched up. You're not going to see absolute unanimity about what's about to happen. The only difference is how much of a fight does Indiana present? That's really what the debate is in people's minds, I feel like. So this is really interesting. To get to the last round of this season, both of these teams just survived 3 rounds. They win their respective conferences. And in most people's eyes, this is going to be quick work. And so that kind of surprises me. I personally disagree. I see this being a very competitive series. And we'll get into all that and picks and stuff a little bit later in the show. But I see Indiana's offense being good enough to deal with this defense.
If you threw out the regular season, 68 wins versus, I don't remember what the Pacers had, 50 win, 51, something like that. If you throw that out and you just looked at the playoffs, if you did not have any knowledge of what happened in the regular season, I wonder if people would have this closer, because the Pacers have also dominated the playoffs. I know they've had close games and they've had to eke some out, but they also have beaten a great Cavs team, albeit a little bit of a hobbled one. And they, had some impressive wins over the Knicks. So I am a little surprised by this. Are you surprised at all that there's not more, or are we just in this era where it's like there's a hive mind and everyone kind of just races because they don't want to stick out as the guy that was way wrong because we predicted the opposite of everyone else?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think people think, man, you really, if you have this level of consensus and you're that guy, that analyst, the media person, whatever it may be, right, talking head, whatever, and you go the other direction and it ends up being a sweep.
Right.
I mean, you really look like you didn't know what the hell you were talking about. Yeah. And I think that's what people are afraid of. I'm not even sure that people are saying like sweep, think it's going to be a sweep, but they're convinced Oklahoma City is going to win the series. For me, I've always looked at it this way. When you get into this line of work and you start predicting these things, and I hate, how much I hate predicting anyway, because I don't know, man. It's hard for me to know who is going to shrink. Okay, it's hard for me to know who's going to rise up. That's internally what those guys are feeling and how they play. It's hard to know all of that. You take all the data, you look at the two teams, you go, okay, I think this team has an advantage. I think they're just better, whatever it may be, and you go in that direction. But I've always looked at it like this: if you say sweep, you're saying literally this team doesn't really belong on the court with this other team. And we're the NBA, right, man. So I can't think that the number of times in 24 years, having to basically predict every single series of the postseason for 24 years, I don't recall ever saying sweep. Yeah. I just think it's too many factors can go into a team winning a game, and it's the NBA, right? So 4 is usually, I'm never going to go there. 5, you're saying clearly this team is better. I can see the other team winning a game, but clearly you know who the better team is. You start getting into 6 or 7, there's a lot more wiggle room there for things to go in one direction or the other. If you say a team's going to win it in 6 games, Adam, and they end up losing the series in 6 or 7, I mean, you kind of, by saying 6 or saying, I think this is a good series. And who knows? Yeah, it comes down to the big moments, right? So I think Indiana, because of how good they are offensively and their style of offense, which is not ISO dependent, which Oklahoma City just eats alive, I think Indiana's offense is good enough to be in these games. And, I don't know how many they're going to win. Indiana's not, I don't think, getting run off the floor. In a game, maybe. They're not going to be in a not competitive situation against this team. I just don't see that. And I feel like a lot of people are saying that, and I'm a little bit surprised by it.
The thing about blowouts, both of these teams create big runs. Indiana, when their offense gets rolling and they're getting out in transition, they can go on these like 20-5 runs in really, really quickly. And Oklahoma City, when they turn you over, same thing. They get these big runs because you can't stop turning the ball over. The pressure gets to you. So I could see some big runs in this one, and I could even see some blowouts by the nature of it. But to your point, I do think that Indiana has a punch that's going to put Oklahoma City on the floor a few times. And let me get to my first question about the series now that we dive into some of the details. One of the things I think is foundational here is the Pacers are a true 5-out team. The Minnesota Timberwolves were not. Denver was not. Memphis obviously was a bit in disarray at the end of the year. This is the first true 5-out that I think Oklahoma City is going to face in this playoff run. And they play 2 bigs. And my first question to you is Oklahoma City going to play 2 bigs in the series? Because I suspect they won't, that they'll go to one of Chet or one of Hartenstein. They might start them, because you stick with what you got. But I imagine this is not a series for the 2 big lineup.
It'll definitely be less than it's been to this point. I totally agree with that. They're going to start him at the beginning of the game. They'll start him. And actually, Daigneault is one of those guys every now and then throws a curveball coming out of the locker room in the second half. He might make a change. I've seen him do that in this postseason.
Yep.
So he could do that. They're going to start the game, most likely start the second half. That gives you about 12 minutes guaranteed that they'll be on the court together. And the predominance that you have both of them out there is going to be far less than it was in the first 3 rounds for the reason you just stated. This is a different team that they're playing, different style, 5-out, read and react, very quick decisions, shooters everywhere, including their big, Miles Turner, and even a couple of the bigs they could play off the bench, but mainly Turner. So you've got to extend yourself more. It's obviously harder for 2 7-footers to do that, even though they're both pretty versatile, agile players. It's still a lot of ground to cover for 2 7-footers if you've got this style of offense. So I do agree with that. I think it's been an advantage for them at times. And one thing I love about Daigneault, he seems to push the right button with regard to how many minutes they should be on the floor together almost every game. He just has a great sense. And Adam, here's it's even more important. He's got such trust, blind faith from his team. They inherently trust his decision-making. And nobody's pouts.
Right.
There's no egos, which is a great thing about their team, really. They're egoless, which allows them to do a lot of the things they do. They trust him to push the right buttons on a given night. It might be your night. Another night it might not be. And everybody's okay with that because it'll come back around to you. And I think that's what he's built. And so I trust that Daigneault will have a pulse on that, when to have them both out there, when not to.
Well, I think that's actually another storyline I didn't even mention in the previous segment here, but it's 2 really great coaches. And you think about, so Daigneault obviously has been phenomenal. They're pushing all the right buttons. They have a smart team, and to your point, an egoless team, so you're allowed to do a bunch of things as a coach. Carlisle, somebody pointed this out on the timeline the other day. Carlisle was coaching during those the era where the games were 68-72 in the playoffs. You remember, just defensive, grind it out. He was a head coach. He executed that style. For him to now be able to evolve, and now he's in this style where it's like, all right, we're going to spread the court. He's coached great defenses. Now he's got one of the best offenses. To me, he's a phenomenal coach, and he too has a team that is egoless, and you could do complex things because they're just so smart collectively.
Well, look, I have tremendous respect for him, and I actually got to know him very well. He did some studio for us in between coaching gigs at one point. We did a lot of studio shows together, man. So I got to spend time with him and watch the game, and that's when you really learn how a person sees the game. He's a little bit quirky with his personality, but you cannot disregard how smart the guy is. And his adaptability to suit the modern game and suit this team's personnel has been incredible to me. I think it's one of the biggest transformations I've seen in coaching style from what he used to be and be known for to what he's doing now. It's incredible, man. He embraced it because he had players that dictated he needed to embrace it to get the most out of them. And look, I said this before, if he somehow wins this series, if they win the finals, you got to put him down. He's got to go on the list as one of the greatest ever.
I kind of agree. He's been in some big teams.
Because his other championship win, was a team that was considered unbeatable.
Yeah.
Okay. In the Miami Heat, when they put that thing together, that's what people thought about that group, that super team with LeBron, D-Wade, and Bosh. You beat that team.
Right.
And then you beat this team that is so far head and shoulders above what the rest of this league has been this year. And the biggest betting favorite I think I've seen in the last, at least the last 10 years, but it's one of the biggest ever. You win this series now, but here's my question to you. Does he have to win the series to necessarily be regarded that way? What if just getting here, is that enough? Does it have to be now give us a really competitive series, man? You go down, but it's like 6 and it's really hard fought, but people just get it. They're better. Is that enough? Or do you think in order to ascend and the way you think about historically who the great coaches are, he has to win this series to do that, Rick Carlisle?
I think like it is with players, I think Carlisle's already thought of one of these like good masterminds of the game, but there's a difference. There's this other tier of guys that have won that go up another level. Are they actually better coaches or do they just win? I don't know. But if he gets another win, to me, it raises him up. It brings him to the front of the class of this. You know, you have your Phil Jacksons and your Popoviches and those guys have tons of them. But then there's this other tier of coaches that have won, and you don't know where to sort them out. I do think you would put him in the front of the class amongst those guys. All right. Another question I have, though, for the series is just who guards who. And I think most times going into a series, you kind of know this. It's more or less clear. This is one where I actually don't know. Now, you have Nesmith, who's been a phenomenal defensive player, but he's kind of the bigger player you need to guard J-Dub. And so I kind of think that he probably goes over there. And then we saw what Nembhard did in game 6 against Brunson, but Shai's a different animal. And then you have the question of where do you put Chet Holmgren? You know, so real quick, have you thought at all about who you think guys start out guarding and who the key matchups will be for Indiana guarding Oklahoma City?
I have, but I have thought about it a lot, but again, I don't know. I'll know more when I get over to the arena tonight and kind of talk to some people and figure this out, because that's the beauty of Oklahoma City. They have multiple guys that can guard multiple players. So it's not like out of the question. That's never the case. Usually you think of matchups and you go, okay, beyond one, maybe 2 guys, you go, oh, okay, he can't guard him. That's a bad matchup for them if he guards him. Do you feel that way? Like, do you feel like it's a bad matchup if Lou Dort is on Halliburton, Nembhard, Siakam?
No,
like,
I mean, that's a nice thing about him. Yeah.
And I think, guys, and Jalen Williams probably too. Cason Wallace, he's going to be great on Halliburton. He'll be good on Nembhard, but you wouldn't put him on a Siakam, right? So it ends there with him. You look at Caruso. He's going to have a major role in this series, man, and he's going to make Halliburton's life miserable. That's his goal, right? And if I'm Daigneault, I want Alex Caruso on Tyrese Halliburton as much as I can get him this series because of his ability to be big, strong, physical. If they're letting the grabbing go on off the ball when Halliburton's trying to come get those dribble handoffs back after he's given it up and he's fighting over the top of those, he's pressuring up in him, he's raking, he's chasing and raking on everything. He's got a relentlessness to him. That could potentially really have a major factor in this series and wearing down Halliburton. By the way, and that's just one guy. Cason Wallace will do a great job picking him up 3/4 court. Dort can guard him. Jalen Williams can guard him, and then Shai's not a slouch either. So that, to me, is the fascinating component, man. They can put 4 different guys on just about anybody on the floor practically. Because to your point, Indiana doesn't have a post-up game other than Siakam ISO game where he puts you on his back. He starts those at 18 feet, though. He doesn't post up, put his hand in the air. He starts at 18 feet, squares you up, then he puts you on his back. He starts working you into the post, and he can spin off either direction. Oklahoma City will probably run help in those situations. So you don't have to worry about getting in a cross match against Indiana, man. You're pretty comfortable with like 4 of your guys guarding just about anybody on the floor, including Miles Turner, who's going to be 25 feet from the basket most of the time.
Right. Yeah, and you don't really want to post up. In fact, Caitlin Cooper was on the show yesterday, pointed this out. He's having his worst finishing season ever of his career, Miles Turner. He's had a great year, but it's not around the paint, right? It's not a guy that you're like, oh, he got the mismatch, let's dump it into him and let's let him go to work. So this brings us to the non-negotiables. I think this is a good way to kind of get into non-negotiables. And you just mentioned Halliburton. So another way to describe this series is the team that creates the most turnovers versus a team that doesn't turn it over. You said Caruso to make his life hell. Can he? Is Halliburton good enough to handle the type of pressure Oklahoma City has been throwing at teams and flustering teams with? Is Halliburton sort of an exception to this rule, or do you see him as vulnerable to turnovers the way so many other guards have been?
He's not vulnerable to turnovers because I think there are guys that do it on his level with ball security. They're not turning the ball over, but the difference is they might not be making the risky pass to do that. And so that's the difference. You can just easily get more conservative in your approach, right? Hey, I'm not turning the ball over. You guys are not forcing that, but I'm also a little more reluctant to maybe throw the ball from the right wing to the left corner on a ball screen because of all the hands and activity. So now instead I make the safe pass to the strong side corner where there's no shot. So maybe his impact as a facilitator can be reduced even if he's not turning the ball over. And if that's the case, you've still accomplished your job if you're Oklahoma City. You don't have to turn this team over. In fact, if we're going to do our non-negotiables, let's start with that one. And the first one I have is the turnovers.
Yeah.
Now, Indiana, incredibly, in the postseason, has only averaged 11.9 turnovers a game. That's unbelievably low, man, for this level of basketball, this level of pressure. In fact, 28 assists to 11 turnovers. That's an incredible assist to turnover rate. And that's their style of play, and that's taking care of the ball. Now, will they turn the ball over more on average than 11.9 times in this series? Yes. You can book it.
Certainly.
You can book it, but I think there's a little bit of a margin there that they're still going to be okay. And for me, the over-under on that is 14.5. If you get north of that, if you get to 15 and above, I don't think the Pacers can win.
Yeah.
If you keep that thing down there, 14 or below, I think you've got a chance because the teams they've played to this point, they haven't turned the ball over as it is, but even when they do at Indiana, they're not getting beat by teams that cash those in at that rate. You turn the ball over against OKC, you're going to give them 20 to 25 to 30 points that they don't have to work for. Right. That's too much to overcome. So that's my first non-negotiable. The turnover number on a given night needs to be 14 or lower.
So you just made 2 points that tie together here that are so fascinating because turning it over is a death sentence for Indiana. But at the same time, to your point, Indiana is great because they risk turnovers but don't turn it over. They're willing to, especially Halliburton, he's willing to get in the air, manipulate the defense, and make plays that are, if I misread this, I'm in trouble, but I'm really good at not misreading it. So to your point, Halliburton has to be aggressive, stay aggressive against a really tough defense. And that's hard to do when you're worried about turnovers. So he can't turn it over, but he can't worry about turnovers either.
That's a good point. Very fair point. I think where he's going to see something different in this series than what he's seen to this point. The Knicks tried to pick this up toward the end of that series, but it was nothing like he's going to see tonight, which is, number one, jamming him up on outlet passes. Watch what Oklahoma City does to him because they're fast enough to recover. Teams are reluctant to do that for one reason. If you gamble up, and I'm not saying you're trying to get a steal off the outlet pass, but you're just trying to get in his way to impede his forward progress, teams are unwilling to do it because they're afraid if you miss and that outlet pass goes over the top, you've now put one defender in the rearview mirror already, and they don't want to risk that. So let's play safe, pick them up at half court or even deeper into your end, and let's just play them that way. And that's when he gets ahead of steam, man. Outlet passes. He comes off that first brush screen at 40 feet. Nowhere is the big to be found. He's downhill, eating you alive with freedom of movement. He needs it. He thrives on it. They're going to jam up the outlet passes. They're going to turn him as much as they can before he gets to half court. So it's not just straight line attacks up the seam or up the sideline. They want to turn him. They did a great job with this against Anthony Edwards in the last series, and it wore him out. But he's not the same elite level ball handler point guard that Halliburton is, but he's an elite level athlete, and they did this very effectively against him. Now it hurt because Mike Conley, this stage of his career, wasn't an answer. Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, like those guys aren't answers for that because they're not really elite level playmakers. So Halliburton's the key there, and you're going to see a lot of pressure and physicality and taking away freedom of movement right up the floor from the beginning. And that's really curious to see how Halliburton handles it.
One thing about Halliburton, like we use the phrase, he sees the court well. I think there's also something else to him, is that he scans the court well. And what I mean by that, if you slow it down and watch Halliburton, every time he catches an inbound pass from like the opposite baseline, he looks, sees the court, catches it, looks. He's constantly like looking, like just quick glances. Even when he's in the pick and roll, he'll take quick glances, like he's scanning the court. And Oklahoma City obviously is great at scrambling, all this stuff. But that's one difference between a guy like Anthony Edwards and him. I think Anthony Edwards sees the court well, but he's not always scanning it. He's thinking attack. He's reading the guy on him. Halliburton is constantly scanning the court, and I think that gives him an advantage against this OKC defense, or it's just something new.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where my eyes are going to be focused tonight a lot, and looking at my breakdown for after the game is the effect that they have on him. Look, he still has nights that he can be strangely passive.
Yeah.
Like he had that game 4 incredible game. He followed it up with game 5. You didn't notice he was on the court. And I didn't think particularly that was because the Knicks got up in him and did all these things differently. I just felt like he almost overanalyzed what he was about to see and shut it down before the game even really started. Like, hey, they're not going to let me do that again. So let me figure out another way to play, and giving the ball up earlier and like all these things. It was weird. And then he came back, and he wasn't great the first half of the closeout game either. He picked it up in the second half and played a lot better. Look, he's got to be a dual threat in this series. He's not going to, if his assist numbers are down, but he's scoring, that's not good enough for them, because it means other guys aren't hurting Oklahoma City. And if his assist numbers are up but he's not scoring, that hurts too, because they need his punch. He's obviously a very, very important player in this series. He's got to play well, but I think it starts for me with collectively and him, the turnovers. So that's my first non-negotiable, Adam. I think 14 or less is the number I'm looking at on a given night.
Well, one other quick one on the turnovers for you. I think Halliburton can handle this, but part of what makes Indiana so good is they have 3 point guards. They have TJ McConnell, they have Nembhard. And then you can even throw Siakam in there, who handles the ball and does a lot of stuff too. So if Halliburton can handle it, but what's your confidence level that Nembhard can, and TJ McConnell and the other guys? And can Indiana win if those guys struggle, but Halliburton is okay with the pressure?
I have no doubt whatsoever that TJ McConnell can. Nembhard could be a little bit more effective. McConnell's he's not going to have a problem. What he won't be able to do in this series is, you think about TJ McConnell, like it's like every game he feels like he's impacting you with a little pull-up 10-footer, a couple layups. Like he comes in and immediately gets these little scoring runs of like 8 points. It's crazy, man. That's how effective he is. Such admiration for a guy that size to do what he does. That's going to be a lot harder in this series because number one, the guys guarding him are going to be just as quick laterally as he is moving with the ball. And that wasn't the case in the first 3 rounds. He's quicker than the guys guarding him. These guys are just as quick, and they're longer than him. So that little pull-up shot's going to be hard, and certainly getting to the rim against this team in general is very difficult. So he gets you those, a couple layups a game, it feels like, 2 or 3 of those, it feels like. I don't know that his punch as a scorer will be felt, but I still think he's going to be absolutely very capable as a ball handler and as a distributor of the ball.
We got to take a break because we're halfway through, but we're going to come back with more non-negotiables in this series, as well as our predictions on the other side. So stay tuned. And in the meantime, hop in the chat. Let us know what your non-negotiables are for the Indiana Pacers, and let us know your predictions as well. We'll be back after this break. The NBA playoffs are heating up, and there's no better time to experience the intensity in person. Whether you're trying to catch your favorite team live or just looking for the best deals on live event tickets, let us tell you about our friends at Vivid Seats. Vivid Seats is the best place to get your tickets for any game or show, including summer concert series. They have the best selection of seats, 100% buyer guarantee, and they're the only ticket marketplace that rewards you for every purchase. For a limited time, our customers can use promo code ALLNBA30 to receive $30 off of their first purchase on Vivid Seats of $300 or more. Just click on the link in the show notes or download the Vivid Seats app and use the code ALLNBA30 for $30 off of your first purchase of $300 or more. And that's not all. For the remainder of the NBA playoffs, Vivid Seats is giving away free tickets every week. Check out the exclusive Game Center in the Vivid Seats apps and play NBA playoff picks for your chance to win. When it comes to playoff hoops, being there is all that matters, so experience it live with Vivid Seats. I also want to tell you guys about FanDuel. It's the best place to find all your favorite player props, and now you can make the smarter parlay with new performance trends. Want to see if a guy's hitting that over consistently, or maybe been flirting with a potential triple-double? Get the latest stats right inside the app and see who's heating up. And once the game starts, that's when things get interesting. You can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. If you don't already have FanDuel, it's not too late to get in on the action. You get started with $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to join today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older in present select states or 18 plus in present DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. All right, back here, segment 2 with Tim Legler. Make sure you're subscribed to the All NBA Show, both here on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can double dip. Helps us out. So, Legs, what's the next non-negotiable you have?
Next non-negotiable is the three-point battle. When you look at the three-point shooting for the two teams, Indiana, I believe, the playoffs number one in the postseason, 40% from the three-point line. That is what they've shot to this point. Oklahoma City, 33%. Now, that's one way to look at it. But for me, it's more than the percentage. It's going to be the raw numbers, the makes. And you look at it, Indiana in the postseason is making 13.4 a game, OKC 12.6. So that's a 0.8 advantage per game for Indiana. That margin has to be more significant. In other words, they are going to be given three-point shots because the way Oklahoma City defends the paint. No one floods to the lane the way they do. Nobody's better on help, on penetration. And then their weak side sink down into the lane so you can't have drop-off passes in the lane. It's a clinic. It's shell defense 101. They do it on a possession-by-possession basis. As a result, there are three-point opportunities to be had against them that you have to take. If you don't take like a half decent three-point shot against them early in the clock, I guarantee you're going to probably end up with a much worse shot in the last 5 seconds of the clock. You can't turn down even marginally good looks against them. So the numbers are going to go up for Indiana. They're going to shoot more than 33 a game in this series. They've got to make their share. That margin to me probably needs to be, on average for the series, 3 more makes a game than Oklahoma City, because the shots are there to be had. And if you don't make those shots, or you shoot a significantly worse percentage than 40%, which is what you're at through 3 rounds, I don't think they have a chance to win. So they've got to make more, and they've got to still shoot a decent percentage. Doesn't have to be 40% because the numbers are going to go up. That means your percentage will probably come down, but it can't plummet to 32%. It's got to be somewhere north of like 36%, taking more and making 3 to 4 more a game on average than OKC.
Well, they have been on fire in these playoffs, and I have this stat from AOP, our guy who's running our social stuff right now. By the way, make sure you follow us, the All NBA Show on Twitter. We got really cool graphics and stats. 42 players have taken at least 53s in the playoffs so far, Legs. Neesmith ranks number 1 at 1.5 points per shot. Nembhard ranks number 2, 1.47. Siakam ranks number 3, 1.39. That's crazy. 42 guys to take 50, and they rank 1, 2, and 3 in efficiency.
Wow.
So they have been on fire. And then here's the other great stat, is that Oklahoma City, as great as their defense is, every team has to give something up. They give up the corner 3. They close out on it. They run it off the line, but they do allow it to be taken. And Halliburton is maybe the best in the league at finding the corner 3. So to me, I'm with you. They've been on fire. They have to make their threes, but they might be able to actually generate it just based on the personalities of these two teams.
I love that. I love those numbers, man, you just gave. Those are incredible. It's a major factor in the series. Halliburton it's one of his favorite plays to make on the court. And he does it 2 different ways. He'll come off the high ball screen. He'll start to head down toward his right hand, usually. Toward his right hand, he's more likely to do this, and he'll throw it early from like the right wingish area as he's starting to turn the corner to the opposite wing, left corner. Like, he loves making that pass. Oklahoma City will give that pass up because when he comes off the screen and it's Siakam or Turner diving or whoever that may be, that weak side floods to the lane. They're not allowing those pocket passes. They're not allowing that stuff. That's just a big part of what they believe in. So as a result, that pass will be there. And those guys aren't going to have a lot of time because no one closes out quicker than OKC. So those same guys that help are flying at the shooter. And they don't even care if you beat them because they overcommit on the closeout because the next guy is going to run over there if you beat them off the dribble. Give a head fake.
Just speeds everything up. Yeah.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. So that first catch is probably a good shot from a good shooter. Indiana's got a whole bunch of those guys. They got to make their share of those. I mean, it might sound like an obvious thing, but it's more important against Oklahoma City than any other team in the league. You're going to have to make it. Minnesota could not make those shots. I don't know, would it matter? And it might not matter. Look, Oklahoma City is so good. There's a reason we're calling these non-negotiables. What we're saying is there's a lot of stuff you've got to do against them, but these things absolutely have to happen or you got no chance. It still might not be enough what we're talking about, but I just know stylistically against that defense, these are the shots that you get. The other way he gets that corner 3, Adam, is he loves to drive all the way down the lane, get a switch. Maybe now there's a big guy on his hip. Guard still chasing him. He'll take him all the way down, literally like through the baseline, and then almost like jump out of bounds and then make that pass to the corner.
Yeah.
Right? He loves that, drive base, kick base mentality. He loves that. That also is there. And then you're going to make a shot that's either contested or semi-contested with a hard closeout. These guys are going to have to shoot the ball around him. So for me, that's a big number every night to look at on the box score. Threes attempted, made, margin between them and Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Do you have another non-negotiable for Indy?
Yeah, I think you're going to like this one. It's my favorite one. Pascal Siakam has to outplay Jalen Williams.
Okay. I do like that one.
You're not surviving the series if you don't, that doesn't happen.
You have to have like 2 of the top 3 players, basically kind of what you're saying here.
Basically, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. I actually think, now look, you're not surviving this series if Halliburton is just terrible.
Yeah.
No, you can't. But let's just say he's like good. And maybe, splashes in a great game or 2. But for the most part, he's good, right? I think you could actually survive that if Siakam is playing great. It would give you a chance. You can't win this series if we're talking more about Jalen Williams than we are Pascal Siakam after these games. You can't win. Pascal Siakam, and they're not going to be necessarily head-to-head. That's not really what I mean. I'm talking about just in terms of impact, eyeball test, and numbers. Pascal Siakam has to outplay Jalen Williams. Okay, you expect Shai to be the best player on the floor. I do. I think you probably do. I think why not? He's the MVP of the league. And nobody's really figured out a way to limit the guy. He's going to average 30 in this series. There's no question in my mind. He'll be the best player. Indiana needs the next 2. That's my point. You need the next 2. And you have the personnel to do that. You could have that with Halliburton and Siakam. But certainly Siakam. has to outplay their second best player, or else you got no shot.
And he's coming off of obviously a phenomenal conference finals. He's been great. I actually think this one is likely to be the case. And it's no knock against Chet, against J-Dub, against any of those guys. I just think those Siakam, Halliburton are playing at such a high level. I expect that to happen here. How about this one? I think Indiana has to pressure SGA, has to effectively pressure him, because you look at just the regular matchup, it's going to be Nembhard. I don't know that that's somebody you'd look at and say, oh, he's going to shut him down. They have to wear them down. They have to full court press and try to get the ball out of their hands. I have another great stat from our guy AOP. Let me see if I can find it here. The Thunder are averaging 1.24 points per possession this playoffs when SGA brings the ball up. That drops to 1.1 whenever he's forced to get it out of his hands to somebody else. So they're scoring very well when he's able to dribble the ball up, kind of set the table, get everybody in their spots, and then do his thing. But if you can pressure him and get the ball out, they're still good, but significantly less good. I don't know if Indiana can do this, because I don't know that they can pressure Shai and make him uncomfortable. But I think it is one of these things they're going to have to find a way to get the ball out of his hands.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody can do that to him effectively. That's he's just so good, man. He's so good with the ball. He's so he accelerates and changes speeds to such an extent. It's really hard to be able to do that. The other thing he's going to do, obviously, is gobble up fouls, which, I only went with my top 3 non-negotiables. If I put another one on there, it would have been this guy can't be shooting double-digit free throws. Yeah. And that's easier said than done, because he's great at drawing them, and you never know how a game's going to be officiated on a given night. But first of all, it's free points. He's getting them easy. He's not breathing hard, and they're setting their half-court defense. So there's a double whammy there when he gets to the line. You got to do the best you can to play him without fouling him. He's one of those guys, players over the years, Adam, where you'd always ask the age-old question, I'll give you guys like Luka, LeBron, Jokic, Giannis. Like, there's different guys falling in this category of this. Should we let that guy have to get 40 or 50 to beat us and take away everybody else? Like that, you always hear that question about great players. The problem with Shai is, you want to take that approach with him, he's going to cook you. Like some of these guys might still have an off night. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if you decide to play him a little bit more honestly and try to limit the other guys a little bit more, do you think that's the way to approach this team? Shai's going to cook, and he's going to do it efficiently. He's going to go for 40 efficiently. Now you got no shot. Yeah. So I don't know that that's the solution here. I think you got to try to mix it up against them, different looks with personnel. Very important that Aaron Nesmith stays out of foul trouble in this series. So I don't know if they want him on him primarily. I would guess that'd be the guy they would prefer to have on him. Nembhard will certainly get his share of that. And, hey, look, Halliburton, TJ McConnell, those guys, Benedict Mathurin, those guys are going to get their share too, but it's primarily Nesmith and Nembhard we're talking about here. And I'm curious to see what ability they have to really in any way make them less efficient.
Do you have any other things you want to discuss before we get to predictions here, Legs? Is there any other angles of this?
I think that I will be surprised if this isn't a very competitive series. And that doesn't necessarily mean every game. Like, you might, who knows, right. Maybe even tonight. Tonight might even be 25-30. Game 1 at home of the finals, OKC. It's an incredible environment. I haven't been in Indiana this year. I'm really looking forward to getting there for game 3 and seeing what that's like to compare it to. I know what OKC's like. I've been out here a number of times this year. They hit you with these runs, man, that are hard to recover from. Take care of the ball early is very important. Knock down some shots early in the game. Like, it's important to get a little bit of your footing established against this team in front of this crowd. So maybe you get a blowout, somewhere along the way. I will be surprised if Indiana doesn't really surprise people with how good their offense is against this team. And I have high praise for OKC. So I think that's probably my final thought on it. I'm going into this really, really excited about watching these games and watching these two teams match up.
Well, one area I think I disagree with you, and we'll see how this plays out. I think there will be a lot of blowouts in that when you look at the score at the end, there might be a handful of 12, 15-point games. But I don't know that they'll feel like blowouts because these teams close the gap so quickly. I can see a handful of games in this one where it's a little back and forth. Maybe a team's down 8 the whole game, but you always felt like they were into it. And then at the end, the final score finishes 14 points. But that's because OKC has a knockout plan. If they're up 8, you have to start taking risks. And if they don't come through for you, those finishes transition. Next thing you know, you lost by 15, 17, 18 points. Likewise, the Pacers have the same thing. They're up by 8 points. You have to take some risks. They get the fast break and they end up closing it out on a run and they beat you by 15 points. So I think these games will be competitive, but they also just are both teams that can go on 10-0 runs. And I think we'll have a lot of like 15-point games that felt like 5-point games.
Well, I think the reason, so maybe I guess your definition of blowout's different than mine, because I could see games like you're describing. I wouldn't describe them as a blowout. I could see like a team is within striking range, 8-10. Maybe it ends up 15 at the end. The context of the game would tell me that's not a blowout. I'm talking those games where they boat race you 25-30. They suffocate you, embarrass you. They've done that to every team they've played in the postseason. I mean, even a 7-game series with Denver had 2 of those, right? They won 2 games like that in a 7-game series. So my point is you might get one of those. I don't know that you'll get more than one, like 25 or 30-point win for Oklahoma City. They might get one. They're that good, and they do it to everybody, it seems like. I have so much respect for Indiana's ability to give you bursts of scoring, no matter what the circumstances. They have this potency to their offense that they can score 10 or 12 points in a very short period of time. So even if they get out to a 15, 18-point lead tonight, Indiana will have that ability in the third quarter, 10-0 run, and they get it to within single digits again. That's kind of how I view it. Ultimately, Oklahoma City, they've won 80 games. 80. They're 80-18. There's a reason. There's a reason, man. So they're the most complete team in the league. And, I think they're going to have command. But I don't know that they're going to be running this team out of the building, I guess is really kind of how I put it.
Here's another prediction I have. I think Shai is going to have a few games where he puts up absurd numbers because I think this will be a fast-paced series. I don't know that the Pacers can really guard Oklahoma City. I think they'll guard them and, make life tough, but I don't think they're going to shut down. This is going to be turned into a grind. And I think one of the calculations they're going to have to make is how much do we stop Shai versus how much do we stop everyone else and not let them get going. And I think at least some of those games, they're going to say, we're going to try to guard Shai straight up and see what happens. And I think he'll have a 40-point game in this finals, maybe even a 50-point game. I think his numbers are going to be pretty high.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's just at the point now. It's like I've said, there's a reason you use the word superstar with certain players, and you better reserve it for certain guys because they do it every night. He's going to get to his number. He's almost always efficient, but there's other nights he had games in the postseason where he was 11 for 27. Then he gets to the line 12, 13 times, and boom, there's his 35 or 38. He still did it to you. He controlled the game, even though he didn't shoot particularly well. So I agree with that. He's gonna, he's not the kind of guy. I don't think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at all thinks like, I'm making this final stage my personal stage, because that's not who they are collectively. It just happens organically because he's that good. And the best thing about their team, besides their defense, which we talk about all the time, one thing I love is there is a clear and well-defined pecking order on their team that everybody accepts. And that's very rare. That is hard to find, and they have it. And as a result, he's always got the hands on the steering wheel. Always. Yeah. Except for those whatever minutes he gets of rest when they turn it over to Jalen Williams, he's got his hands on the steering wheel the entire time. And that's why he's able to do what he does every single night, because all of his teammates accept that, want that. They thrive off of his leadership and his ability to do it against every situation. So I agree with that. I think Shai's going to have a monster series.
All right. Do you want to get into predictions for how you think this is going to go? Who's going to win?
Go ahead. Ask me the first question. What's your first question?
The win. Who's going to win the series?
Right, who's going to win it? Yeah, I'm going to pick Oklahoma City. I'm going to pick them in 6 games. I think they're going to be, like I just said, I think they're going to be competitive. And maybe the 2 they have to win, they got to sweat out, like make plays at the end of the game, make a couple big threes, like whatever it may be, and win nail biters. And maybe OKC has one blowout, one very comfortable win and then a couple games like I just described. I think that's probably how it's going to go. But I think for the most part, the minutes in this series will be competitive. Ultimately, though, I think Oklahoma City's the better team, and they've been the best team in the league all year, and you have to favor them.
Would you be more surprised if the Pacers won or the Thunder swept?
I would be more surprised probably if the Pacers won, just because of the totality of the team, what they represent as a team in every area, especially defensively to lead the league in defending the paint and the 3-point line and transition. I mean, that doesn't make sense to take all that away. So just the totality of their defense, I think for me to see a team beating them 4 times before they beat them 4 times, that would be harder for me, I think, to process, even though I think it'll be competitive. I just think Oklahoma City's better.
I am the same with you. I think I probably would say Oklahoma City in 5. I think they are pretty, just more dominant, and they're going to be able to impose their will defensively. I hope it goes 6 or 7 because I actually really like the way Oklahoma City defends and the way the Pacers solve problems. So I hope that this becomes more intriguing and we're seeing all these adjustments and this things get strung out. But I do think Oklahoma City is just too overwhelming, especially at home. And you're going to get 3 of the first 5 games of the series at home. And that's why I think that they could, close this thing up quickly. I assume that means Shai is the MVP because it's a hard time imagining a finals MVP. But let me just ask you, what do you think is the highest scoring individual game we see in the series?
Highest individual scoring game?
Because I told you I think Shai's going to have one monster game, like 40.
I'll say, yeah, I think he has a 45-point game.
45. Yeah. So you're with me on this. Yeah, I think he goes off. Do you think Halliburton struggles in the series?
I think he struggles, not in totality, but it definitely has a couple of nights where because that's kind of been a little bit of his MO. I mean, it's kind of what he does. As great as he is, he will have, like I said, the one against the Knicks was self-imposed. I just thought his mentality was off from the jump. He got so much attention for 48 hours for the game that he had. Maybe it was even uncomfortable for him, the level of attention he was getting on that incredible game he played, because he came out the next game and was kind of like, all right, well, I did my thing. You guys can carry it tonight. It was just weird to me. So I think he'll have a couple of games that are definitely subpar for him. He'll have, I think, let's say it goes 6, like I said, 2 subpar games. He'll have 2 games that he's just average, and I think he'll have 2 games where he plays very, very well.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any other predictions you wanted to make? We have one super chat, but do you have any other predictions you want to kind of get out?
No, man. I think the series MVP will be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I tell you what, of all the things you asked me about, which one I'd be shocked more, this or that, I think the most shocking thing of all to me would be if Oklahoma City wins the series and he's not the finals MVP. Like, I see no scenario under which that could happen.
I was telling people yesterday, FanDuel, if you want to bet on the Thunder, it's like -750. If you want to bet on Shai MVP of the finals, it's -550. And I said, hey, man, if you're going to bet on Oklahoma City, just bet on Shai MVP because it's the same thing.
There's no question. That's what I'm saying. It's literally, it might be the only team in the league, maybe besides Denver, that I would say it's inconceivable.
Right.
Any other player could be, although even look, Jamal Murray, man, he has one of those bubble series, who knows, but Jokic's numbers are just too good across the board. He controls the game.
Yeah.
It's like those 2 teams, probably more than any other, and then like when Luka was back in Dallas, like if that team had won it, like there's no way it can be anybody else. Even with Kyrie on his team, it couldn't be anybody else. That's how I feel about OKC. And Jalen Williams might be great. It doesn't matter. It's going to pale in comparison to what Shai's going to do. So if OKC wins it, he will absolutely be the finals MVP. If Indiana somehow wins it, it could be one of 2 different guys.
Yep, totally could. So that's my gambling advice too. If you're certain the Thunder are going to win, don't bet on them to win. Bet on Shai for MVP because it's the same thing and you get better odds.
There you go. Great advice. Look at you, man. That's really a logical way to break that down.
Leonard Bonerek says, question for Conspiracy Adam. Oh, I'm here. Do the refs keep their SGA whistles holstered in an attempt to make the series more competitive? Probably not. Probably not. I just think I don't think there's any like that. I don't believe in those types of things like refs
Yeah, I don't either.
change it up based on when a series are. I just think some refs call the games differently. If we see this statistically, some refs call more charges, more offensive fouls, more moving screens, this or that. So just luck of the draw on who you get depending on which game.
Yep.
So yeah, conspiracy.
All right,
Adam,
let me ask you one last question before we go, because we didn't touch on this. Who is your biggest X factor? One for each team.
Biggest X factor. Is it tough to say Nembhard's an X factor for me because I like his game. I just don't know if he's going to be able to handle what OKC throws at him defensively. I love him. He's not the most fleet of foot. He's crafty, but it's almost like you need more than craft against the Thunder. You're too athletic.
Well, first of all, I think in this series, the definition of X factor is anybody outside of Halliburton, Siakam, Shai, or Jalen Williams.
So I'll say Nembhard then for Indy.
That's not fair to say any of those guys. Anybody else is on the table for me to be an X factor. So Nembhard's a good one. For me, for Indiana, it's Nesmith. Because as I alluded to, number one, his defense is going to be prominent. And two, I said there are 3-point shots to be had against OKC.
Yeah.
So he's going to have a couple of those games, man, maybe where he makes 5 to give them a chance. So I think Nesmith could be a good one. And then I think for
OKC, real quick on Nesmith, real quick for Nesmith. The size has bothered them, like scoring wings has bothered Oklahoma City traditionally, but Nesmith also is the most mistake prone of the core guys on Indiana. Like they have a really smart guys. Nesmith's pretty smart, but he is the guy that can make the most mistakes. And so I could see that going either way, that X factor. That's a good one.
Awesome. And then OKC, man, this is a tough one. I guess you'd have to go with, and maybe Chet shouldn't be on the table for that either, to be honest with you, man.
I agree.
Maybe, what I mean?
He's too good.
Maybe anybody outside of those top 3 for Oklahoma City. So let's go with Dort or Hartenstein. Take your pick. One of those two, right?
It might be Dort. Honestly, it might be Dort.
Because Dort's one of those dudes, and we've seen it. He can like do almost nothing offensively. He's always a factor defensively, and then hit you with 3 threes in a minute and a half. Just ask Denver, right?
Yeah.
Or Minnesota. Whoever
really,
did
one
that.
game.
Yeah.
One game a series from a guy like Dort where he has a run and it just completely flips. And I agree with you. There'll be runs in this series and it'll probably come down to, Obi Toppin hit 2 threes in a row. That's a huge bump. Thomas Bryant hit a couple in that closeout game 6. That was a huge bump. It changed the game. Dort is in that category where when he makes a couple in a row, all of a sudden a 3-point lead turns into an 11-point lead and you're not catching up. All right, hit that outro music, guys. Legs is in Oklahoma City. And he will be on SportsCenter after the game. So you're watching the game on ABC. Once it's over, flip on over and catch him and Scott Van Pelt. You've got a set right there on the floor. They're just going to wheel you guys in.
That's what we were told, man, but we'll see. It's better laid plans sometimes. You get over there and find out it's not possible, but we'll see. That's the plan.
All right. Well, it should be great. So you can get his instant analysis right there after the game with Scott Van Pelt. And then tomorrow you'll be back right here. Whatever happens in game 1, we're going to be breaking it down in great detail. You're not going to miss it. Make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
All silly like the mayor.